Mayor Jacobs,
I am here.
Committeeman Hickey. Yeah.
He's muted, but here.
He's there. He's
He's
there.
there, I see
He
him.
raised his.
He is there.
Mr. Walter.
Here.
Mr. Leonard.
Here.
Mr. Rodelius.
Here.
Mr. Giovanni. Mr. Wild.
Here.
Mr. DiMartino.
Here.
Chairwoman Gotcha.
Here.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Bedminster Township Land Use Board was filed with the Township Clerk, sent to the Bernardsville News and the Courier News and to all subscribers, and posted at the Township Municipal Building, 1 Miller Lane, Bedminster, New Jersey, on January 10th, 2025.
Please stand for the flag.
To the flag.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, and justice for all.
Liberty, justice for all.
Always like 2 steps ahead. When the audience is behind.
First, we'll open it up to the public. If there's anything that anyone would like to talk about that's not on the agenda.
G Pentel, is that anyone that's in here or that?
Oh, he's with us.
He's, okay, good. So,
Okay.
and Rob is also so, and Jake is from the newspaper, so I do not believe that we have any.
Okay. All right, we will close it to the public. We have minutes that we need to approve from April. If you've had a chance to read them,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April 10th. Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody? Vince, were you here? You were not.
I wasn't here for that.
No, so need to use yourselves.
I did.
Everybody else?
Think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I
the
was
mayor,
here.
but yeah, so that's.
All right, we have some correspondence from Mr. Mallon, who represents Country Club 305. And they're looking for a 1-year extension. I believe we have that in our packet.
You
Yes,
do
I
it?
can help. I can help you with that, Madam Chairman.
Sure.
This is very straightforward. Tom Melman represents the subdivider on Country Club LLC. And one of the provisions of our ordinance is that to record a plat, you must submit it within 6 months of the approval. But they were still working on their governmental approval, so they were not prepared to submit the final plat for signatures and recording, which is appropriate because you should never record a final plat until all conditions are fulfilled. So I recommend that you consider the resolution that you have before you to grant an extension of 1 year from that 6-month restriction in our ordinance and from the for the statutory protection period of the subdivision.
Okay, so we need to have a roll call, I believe?
I need a first
Motion.
and a second, and then yes.
Yes, you do. Yeah, okay. Mhm.
I'll second.
Okay,
Mayor Jacobs. Do you participate? on that
Just, yeah, I was just checking to see if this is planning board or board of adjustment.
Planning board.
Who's planning board?
Yeah.
Yeah, no variances and just a subdivision.
Aye.
Committeeman Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Walter?
Aye.
Mr. Leonard?
Aye.
Mr. Rodelius?
Aye.
Mr. DiGiovanni?
Aye.
Mr. Wild?
Aye.
Mr. DiMartino?
Aye.
Chairwoman Gotcha.
Aye. Okay, extension is approved. We have 2 resolutions as well, New Jersey American Water. We need a motion to approve.
So moved. I'll second.
And that was not, planning board. Mr. Walter?
Aye.
Mr. Leonard?
Aye.
Mr. Rodelius?
Aye.
Mr. DiGiovanni?
Aye.
Mr. Wild?
Aye.
Mr. DiMartino?
Aye.
and Chairwoman Gotcha.
Aye.
Janine, just a quick comment on the resolution.
Mhm.
It says PB up in the up here,
Okay,
so I think that should be POA.
yeah, on the, New Jersey,
Yeah,
okay.
Okay, and we've already approved the country club 305.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're with Paul.
For completeness, we first have,
Yeah.
Tiger Claw LLC. This is for the Exxon station down in Washington Valley and 202, 206.
Right.
They are incomplete based on this letter. They have submitted new information to me, but I have not yet reviewed it.
Okay,
They're not ready to stick.
okay,
The next completeness is AT&T for the application you are hearing tonight, based on the documentation submitted. There are some waivers that are required, but it's recommended that those waivers be granted, the application be deemed.
okay.
So if the board would, if the board would entertain it, then it's a motion to waive the remaining items for completeness and to deem the AT&T application complete. Is there such a motion?
so moved.
I'll second.
Okay,
Hey,
vote. Go ahead.
Mayor Jacobs,
Aye.
Committeeman Hickey,
I believe I have to recuse myself on this one.
that's right, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Mr. Walter?
Aye.
Mr. Leonard?
Aye.
Mr. Rogel is also recused, Mr. DiGiovanni,
Aye.
Mr. Wiles,
Aye.
Mr. DiMartino,
Aye.
and Chairwoman Gotcha.
Aye. Okay, our application is complete. Should we go into this old business in the fourth round? Should we do that now? Do that first before the applicant?
Yes, because Colin and George are here for that, and then they can leave because
They
they're.
can leave, okay. All right. So Frank, I guess you're taking this?
Sure. I better be.
Yeah, it's your job.
That's what I heard. We are once again dealing with the affordable housing obligation of the township. We're in a situation where the planning board is the only agency that can adopt the master plan or any element of the master plan. But we're always well informed to realize that the governing body, if you're going to recommend a zoning change or a housing plan, governing body is going to need to be willing to implement it for it to be right to do. We've been fortunate in the, well, somewhat fortunate in the fact that the backlog of, or the excess credits from prior rounds have been able to cover most of the obligation that the township has had. But what we're doing now, between now and June 30th, is you're going to adopt a round 4 housing plan. And what that plan needs to do is summarize what your obligation was in the first round, what you did to meet it, the prior rounds rather. In the third round, what you did to meet it. And in the fourth round, what you're going to do to meet it. And we have, what I've summarized for you in those papers is the fact that your backlog's not the right word. This is the best way to describe it. When the Allen Dean decision came down, Bedminster Township was assigned 819 affordable units at that point in history. When we look back at everything that you've been required to do from the time COA first came along, you've been required to do 451 units. So that was 819 units in what was effectively round 1, 6-year period. And now we're talking about a period of 1987 to 2035. So you would have had to, if you were building a Hills to meet that full number for that whole period right now, it would have 2,250 units. And as I think you all know, we have something more like 4,000 units between Timberbrook and the Hills and everything in Pluckerman. So you've done a substantial, you provided a much more substantial contribution to the regional need than was ever your fair share. You haven't really kicked and screamed about it, but you're now trying to make sure that you get full credit for everything you've done in the past that's creditable. and that you do the part you haven't yet satisfied according to the Fair Housing Act amendments. And that relates to the family rental obligation. And if you remember, we went through this, the reason KRE got approved, the units that the zoning board approved at the Elite Job on Lamington Road, all went to meet the 28 unit obligation that we had in the third round as a result of the court settlement. Now, in this round, the full obligation of the town is 72 units. And you can address all of those requirements except 9 family rental units that again will be
Mhm.
affirmative requirement that the township has. So what I've outlined for you shows how we have met the obligation in each and every round. And it is the basis for the housing element and fair share plan, which is that document that you got with all the tables and charts in it. That's the housing element. The document I'm going to add to it, which is summarized in the papers I sent today, is the fair share plan. The fair share plan is the thing that needs to meet your round 4 obligations. And I believe that we've been able to do that. So very briefly, I'd like the mayor to be able to comment on this because he's sort of guided this process in a way I think has been very effective. So Larry, maybe you want to say a few things.
Right, so when we look at the 72 units that were allocated to Bedminster by DCA, 3/4 of those may be owner occupied for sale units. That's where we have the surplus from the construction of the hills. And as Frank mentioned, we have hundreds of surplus units built from the hills that can be applied to fourth round obligations. So of the 72, what is it? Is that 58? I forget what that can be satisfied with owner occupied units. So 3/4 of those.
25% of our units have to be
Right.
rental units, and half of that 25% are the ones that are the family rentals we're talking about.
Yeah, so let's run through the numbers. So 72 is the total number, 18 of which can be rentals or must be rentals. Of those rentals, half can be through senior or group homes. So 9 can be through group homes, and we have senior and group homes with Pluckerman Senior, which is restricted in perpetuity. We counted that once during the initial round, and we get to count it again because it's another 30-year cycle. And that leaves us, as Frank mentioned, with 9 family rentals that we still need to provide. Looking at the math and going back and forth and back and forth, we were looking at some of the credits that may have been left over on rental units from third round. And we do have some rental units that can be applied towards third round obligations. We also looked at KRE. So KRE has not been built. It was approved, but it has not been built. And in discussions with representatives from KRE, they've advised us that they're looking to modify the project, which was approved at 160 units with 24 affordable housing rentals. It was an expensive project, a whole lot of intricacies, including the podium and the parking, the underground parking or the under podium parking, that created a lot of expense. They've done some value engineering on the project and are going to come back, and they've written a letter that their intent is to come back with a total of 140 units rather than 160. However, with the new affordable housing law, since Bedminster is within a regional planning area, the Highlands, the set aside for affordable housing is not established at 15%, but at 20%. So with 140 units, they're actually providing more affordable housing than they were at 160 units. So Frank, John Bellardo, Tom and I with Colin have gone through the numbers, have back and forth with the KRE team. And in crunching the numbers, the 9 units that we are required to provide with respect to family rentals can be accommodated with prior third round credits and the additional units that will be built by KRE. So KRE will be eventually, they will hopefully within this year, coming in with a site plan application for the 140 with 28 family rental units.
We may need to adjust the zoning a little bit. We won't need to amend the master plan. So this should be a quick process, but you'll see them coming back for another round of what we did before. It'll be a little more robust. You'll have the opportunity to again express the concerns that we had about the streetscape and all that stuff. And you'll see that some of the elements they've had to take out relate directly to that streetscape feeling we had before. So there will be a deliberative process here. The good news is they're going to give us 28 affordable units, so which means we have more to apply to the 4th round because of their project. If we need a couple more than that, we've already had a dialogue. The mayor opened a dialogue about maybe trust fund purchasing units so that we don't have to go find them some other way, sprouting through the hills. When there's an otherwise mechanism in place for rental units in a complex where they can be added and well managed and maintained. So I think we've got our handle on what it is you have to do for this next round. When we submit the plan on June 30th, there's a period during the summer where anybody who wants to take a whack at you can. And then by September, the people that are working for the program, the Affordable Housing Dispute Resolution Program, will be working with the towns that have gotten some response to what their plan was from the program. And will be in court because everybody had to file a declaratory judgment lawsuit in order to continue to proceed through this process. Our job right now is by June 30th, get this thing adopted. We have it, I think it's June 12th is our hearing. Is that correct, Janine?
As long as everyone's okay with that, that's what I have earmarked as our next hearing where we will adopt that here. And
So-
then you guys at the governing body will, I think it's June 16th, then move.
Correct.
Is there a time frame on when these need to be built? Is the DCA gonna come back and say, hey, guys, it's been 6-7 years, you haven't built any of these? Or is it just enough that we say we have a plan in place?
There's a mechanism that they refer to as the midpoint monitoring that allows them to, the process to look in on what you've done. And if you haven't, if nothing's working, they can suggest that maybe you need to look at doing something else. When you've granted an approval like we did for KRE, where we know we're entitled to the 24 affordable units that we were supposed to get there, all you needed to do to get credit for those in the 3rd round was zone that property for that. You didn't even have to get somebody to come in and get an approval. The only way you get the bonus credits is you don't get it just by zoning. You either get them approved or built and occupied, like happened up in Lamington on Lamington Road.
Bonus credit.
To pick up the bonus credits, because in the 3rd round and all the prior round credits that were available, they were trying to incentivize rental units, so they gave a 1-for-1 bonus for every family rental that you came up with. And the rental bonus was very powerful, and now it's gone. So new set of rules, new sheriff in town, different priorities, more interest in non-institutional housing, the kind of housing that group home type facilities. So what happens next is, if you are happy with the approach that I just outlined, and I'm happy to spend as much time as you want to talk about more detail, I will deliver back to you a document before it goes for public hearing, so you'll see the entire thing together. I don't think we're going to need to have another meeting to go over it because of how we did this in the last round, and it's gonna look an awful lot like your last housing plan, updated. But everything's updated based on current standards, and so we take every opportunity to get credits out of what you've done in the past. And you've done a lot. When we get all done with this, after crediting everything that you've done, you still have 660 extra credits. When I was in high school, that was always great. You could do better than an A, you could get extra credit, right? So,
And so while the rental bonus is no longer available under the new law, there are other bonus credits that are built into the legislation. And we may be taking advantage of that, not necessarily with respect to the fourth round obligations, but we will be presumably creating additional bonus credits that will be available for Bedminster in years to come.
So we're good until then, 2035.
that's correct. You'll get a judgment of compliance and repose. That means you're good to go till then. Right? And because you've done so much more than you should have done, I wouldn't say that anybody that tried to sue you would get laughed out of court, because there's a way that they, some towns, I think you're gonna see towns being sued for their present need.
Now you're talking about builders coming in saying we
Right.
can build. So, yeah.
Right. The whole idea of Mount Laurel was the builders were the friend of the court. They were gonna get the housing done, and they had a very sincere interest in making sure it got built. And the rules made sure that the affordable housing got built along with the market units, so we didn't end up at the end, mess. But like I say, that's a real thumbnail sketch of what it is. It's relatively uncomplicated. It's a lot of bean counting, and when you look at the tables, you'll see the neighborhoods that we've assigned to different categories. Ultimately, this goes through the sort of the proof checking process when the court reviews it. The court master tells the court whether or not it should be approved. And then when it gets approved, you get your repose. So I would expect, because of how straightforward your plan is, this isn't going to be one. Never mind.
Yeah, don't say it, Frank. Don't do it.
That's really close. So again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Do we have any group homes in Bedminster?
We have a facility that is technically not eligible for credits, but that it functions like a group home because it's a home for retired ministers.
Well, that's what I was thinking,
Yeah,
if we big credit for that.
right. Yeah, Robin tracked that one down. I think we ended up concluding that because it's not deed restricted and there's no affirmative marketing, that we're not in a position, well, the affirmative marketing for group home, I shouldn't say that. It's the deed restriction, I think that was the issue. Because it's restricted to be occupied by the reverends, but it isn't income restricted according to the rules that have to be in place for them to be low and moderate income qualified.
Frank,
That's a good question. Yes.
it's Lou. Can you give us examples or a definition of what a group home is?
There are laws in New Jersey. I'm looking at the screen. You probably have no.
You don't have to do that. It's fine.
Sorry.
I see you. I
Very
see you.
Yeah, good. You get to see me and I don't see you. What kind of system is that? Group homes for the developmentally disabled are enabled under the municipal land use law so that any single family residential zone has to allow a group home because it's essentially comparable to a single family dwelling. So there are group homes for a variety of social purposes, and they don't always qualify. You have to look at the fine print to see whether or not they qualify for credit. There is an advantage in that group homes do get extra credit in this iteration of the plan. So the bonuses have shifted away from family rentals and toward those other alternative housing opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Have any questions? Any questions? Okay. Thanks, Frank.
I know what to do. I'll get it back to you. Thank you.
Okay.
So Janine and I will schedule a notice for June 12th. And we really need at least a majority of you, 5 of the board, to be present so that we can meet the June 30th statutory deadline. That's very important here. So we have at least 5 of you who will be present on June 12th.
Yeah.
We should be.
Good.
A lot of head
Great.
shake.
Yep, I think so.
Okay,
Okay, thanks, Tom. All right, we're ready for our application, 18.
See you later.
Not at all.
Hi, Colin.
Colin.
Night.
Good night, George.
Good, how are you? Good to see you, buddy.
Good evening, Board. John Machowski, Fagry Drinker, on behalf of AT&T. The applicant here is AT&T Services, Inc. This is for property located at 1405 to 1455 Route 206, Block 41, Lot 16.02. It is located in the OR Office Research Zone. Our application here is for preliminary and final site plan approval for an emergency generator with above-ground diesel fuel tank. That facility is going to be located within a portion of the existing parking lot, which will result in the net loss of approximately 9 parking spaces, which triggers the need for a variance for the number of parking spaces, which we will discuss during our presentation. As our witnesses will testify to in more detail, this emergency generator is needed as soon as possible to back up the HVAC system needed to cool the on-site data center. We have received 2 review letters for this matter. One, the engineering review letter from Mr. Ferrero dated May 1st, 2025. We received a planning review letter from Mr. Banish dated May 2, 2025. We, as our witnesses will testify to, will comply with those letters. I do have 2 witnesses tonight, both of which I believe you're familiar with. Rob Michello and Ron Kennedy from Gladstone Design Engineer, our civil engineer and our planner. So with that, unless there's any initial questions, I'm going to hand it off to Rob to start our presentation.
Okay, anyone? No? Go ahead.
Great.
I'll
We can-
swear,
Yeah.
I'll swear in the witnesses, Rob and Ron, please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Do.
And the board, please state your names and address, at least a business address.
Sure, Robert Moshello, 265 Main Street, Gladstone.
Ronald Kennedy, 265 Main Street in Gladstone.
And we'll just confirm for the record that the board recognizes and accepts the qualifications of Rob Machella as a professional engineer and Ronald Kennedy as a professional engineer and a professional planner. Please go ahead, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So I have 2 exhibits for this evening that I want to put up, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the first one up on the screen now. Give me 1 second to share my screen here. Great, so we'll call this one A1 for the record, and it's entitled Overall Aerial Exhibit dated May 8th, 2025. I'll just mark in 1x17, I'll give that to you.
Thank you.
Janine wants it done. Just for some context here, I have the 2020 state aerial that you're looking at on the screen, north being up on the plan. For context purposes, Route 206 runs in a north-south direction on the east side of the property. The property itself is outlined in yellow. It's block 41, lot 16.02, which is 26.249 acres. And we were here approximately a little over 2 years ago, for, if you may remember this, for the folks that were there, for what they called the accessory research structure that AT&T was going to install on the property and bring it over from the Bedminster property. As it happened to have turned out, and just for reference purposes, that structure was supposed to go right down here on the southern side of the property. A second to zoom in there, in that southern parking lot. As it turns out, they have not actually moved the structure. They decided not to bring it to this property. So that approval that was granted a little over 2 years ago, they basically at this point giving it up in terms of that. So there were a couple parking spaces that at that time were going to be taken up. I believe it was 5 parking spaces by that structure. They never built it. So those spaces are still there. We're basically abandoning the approval, and those parking spaces are now available. So just for that, put that context on the record, I know there was a question, I think it was in Mr. Ferraro's letter, about that structure and whether or not it was built, and essentially they decided not to do it. So that being said, just some other information on the property. The two existing office buildings exist on the site, approximately 233,500 square feet over the two buildings with a connector in between. There's 1,030 parking spaces on the property today, both surface and underground parking inside the buildings as well. So the focus of this evening, I'm going to go to so let's just do one more point on here. So just to point out, we're in the OR zone, office research zone. We have residential to the west, residential to the south. You have some residential to the southeast on the other side of 206. You have the advanced office complex to the east of the property, which is the subject of the fresh pet application, which building is under construction. Now it's supposed to be completed in the next few weeks. And then to the north, you have the OR zone, which goes up past the library, past Lamington Road, into the office buildings up there. So that's the context of the surrounding environments. Let's go to my next exhibit, which is going to be a site plan rendering. We'll call this site plan rendering. It's entitled, site plan rendering, and it's E2 for the record, dated May 8, 2025. So the focus of this application is the installation of a generator. I'm going to zoom into the plan here so you can see that a little bit better on the screen. That accessory research structure was actually going to be right down here in these 5 spaces. What's happening, as I mentioned, the focus of this application is to install a gen set, as we call it, or generator set, and fuel tank, above ground fuel tank, in essentially 9 parking spaces closest to the building. And the reason why this area was chosen was the power comes into the buildings in this location. So we'll be able to locate it close to the utility rooms and the power that services the building. Also too, in terms of this back portion of the site, it's pretty heavily screened from Lucas Brook Road. There's an existing berm that runs along the road there now. It's about 3 to 5 foot high. There's vegetation on top of that berm, and it does provide a good screening for this area as well on the back portion of the site. But the main thing is the power is right there for connecting into the building. Essentially, it's a 1,250 kilowatt generator. This is actually a generator that AT&T currently owns. It's down in their Virginia campus, and they're going to bring it up here and install it on the site. And it comes with there's an 8,000 gallon double wall steel fuel tank that's going to be diesel fuel tank that's going to be above ground next to it, which will supply the fuel to the gen set. And what we have to do here is, because the parking lot has a slight slope to it, we have to basically take out the asphalt and build 2 concrete pads to set the generator and the fuel tank on. So it'll be elevated anywhere from 6 inches to a foot above grade. The generator itself is in a sound enclosure, and that sound enclosure actually provides sound attenuation. And the manufacturer's specs on it is that the sound attenuation is 65 decibels at 25 feet from the enclosure. So that the generator itself is over 150 feet from the nearest property line, and under the state sound or noise standards, during the day it's 65 dBA at the property line, and at night it's 50 dBA at the property line. And in this case, the generator during normal daytime maintenance and testing operations will meet that 65 dBA standard. That's 65 dBA 25 feet from it, and we're 150 feet away. When actually the dBAs go down as you move away from the generator. So when you're testing it for maintenance purposes, it has to meet the noise requirements of the state. When it's running for emergency purposes, it's exempt from the noise standards. And again, those noise standards are set for daytime and then this nighttime hours as well. The generator will not be tested in the evening hours, of course. So I think there was a comment in one of the review letters about testing hours. We could agree to test during daytime business hours only from 10 to 4 is reasonable for that, and no testing on the weekends or in the evening hours. As far as any illumination goes, since this is an existing gen set that we have already, there are doors on it in order to access the enclosure around the generator, because it's a sealed enclosure for sound purposes. There are doors to access the generator itself on the inside, and on the enclosure, there's actually a lights above the doors. So there will be a typical, I call them jelly jar lights. You see them on just your regular doors to a building. They have lights on it that's there that will be on that, but that's just essentially for maintenance purposes for accessing the generator. It's not made for floodlights for maintenance at night or anything like that. The height of the gen set's approximately 12 feet, 12.5 feet, depending on which side we're measuring it on. The height of the fuel tank is approximately 6.5 to 7 feet. And like I mentioned, that's an above ground fuel tank, double walled steel tank. We're the closest residence, we're over 300 feet away from the closest residence to the south, and there's essentially a screen buffer along the southern property line as well. I'm sorry, to the east is the west is the closest resident. And we're more than 300 feet away from them. And essentially, that covers the majority of my testimony. Oh, just to one other point, as far as zoning goes, it complies with all the setback requirements. No new impervious coverage is proposed here, and we're not anticipating the removal of any trees adjacent to the parking lots in order to install this.
Do we want to just, Rob, do we want to confirm sufficiency of parking and also the urgent need for this?
Yeah, so Mr. Kennedy will talk about the parking in terms of that, in terms of the variance relief we're requesting there, but in terms of the urgent need for the generator, the building doesn't have a generator now that can service all the HVAC systems inside the building. Back in 2024, unfortunately, the power went out to the building. I guess everybody knows the power around here can sometimes be a little bit finicky. And the power went out to the building. The data center that AT&T has inside the building kicked on to its battery backups for all the computers in there. But the HVAC kicked off, the temperature in the data center went up to 110 degrees, and the sprinkler head popped. And they ended up with almost $500,000 worth of damage inside the building because the sprinkler system.
That hurt.
So, yeah, so because of that, this is really critical that they get the generator in here and get it set up. Summer's coming, we know how power is here in the summer, thunderstorms and the light. So we're really trying to get this done for them as soon as we possibly can. That concludes my direct testimony.
Okay, the parking here, let's just go over parking a little bit.
Sure.
I'm looking at your scale here. And you got 1,039 required,
Yes,
and you have 1,030 existing. And you're proposing 1,021,
that's correct.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, can you afford to give up those parking spaces? Because it looks like it's awful full.
It is a full site, and Mr. Kennedy's gonna kind of touch on that also from a parking requirement, but we thought we can, when we did the original application, nobody was in the building yet.
Right,
So, now we know that the building's occupied, AT&T's dealing with their back to work flow now, people coming back, and so they were still working through some shift adjustments and things of that nature, and Mr. Kennedy will touch on more of the details of that from a parking perspective, but we feel, generally speaking, that yes, we can give up the 9 spaces.
Well, actually, it's not even, it's either 4 or 5 because you've never built in that other structure, right?
Correct. So the delta would be 4 or 5, 4 more over the 5 that we were.
You're gonna lose maybe 4 or 5.
mhm. So you're not gonna lose 18?
No.
Okay, all right, Mr. Kennedy, you'll go on, I guess. Okay, anything else?
Well, Rob, are you providing the noise testimony? That was it?
That was it.
Yeah, I'd like you to go over that again, because it was a little quick for my ears.
So the enclosure that the generator is in, okay, the manufacturer specifications for the sound attenuation, and they base it on a certain distance away from the enclosure. And that spec is 65 dBA, 65 decibels at 25 feet from the enclosure. In all directions.
And the road itself is what, 100?
The road is the property line is 150 feet from the enclosure. And then the nearest residence is 300 feet from the enclosure. So as sound attenuation works, the further you get away from the noise, the sound, the further the decibels go down. So if we're 65, 25 feet away, naturally we would continue to reduce that level as we hit the property line, where we're required to maintain 65, 30, and 50.
Well, what is the noise attenuation on the system now? What is the noise attenuation that's built onto the
There's a muffler, and it's the enclosure itself that the generator's inside of that has the sound dampening material.
Okay, so there's the enclosure, and then there is a muffler. I presume the muffler is outside the enclosure.
Well, it's inside the.
It's inside the enclosure?
It basically looks like a tractor trailer, if you will, and everything's inside of it, and that's how the enclosure keeps the volume of.
Okay, other than the exhaust
Correct, which the exhaust
Okay.
goes out through grate openings in the side of the enclosure.
Okay, and how old is this generator?
I'll tell you in 1 second. I believe it is. The shop drawings we were given on it are from 2019.
So Paul, just is there any degradation of noise attenuation?
There should not be. The sound drops with the square of the distance, so it's very dramatic the way it drops off. I would make one comment, which is why I wanted to hear it again, because Rob, I know you said that during emergency operations, the noise levels don't apply. They actually do, because if you read the regulation, it doesn't apply for things like hospitals and firehouses and those sorts of things in municipal buildings. And it specifically says that in the regulation. Everybody thinks that every generator is exempt, but it actually isn't. If you read the reg.
I'll have to check that because it was always our understanding that.
Unless they've changed it in the last 2 years. So I've been down that. But in my opinion, you're far enough away that you're going to be dramatically below that, even the 50 at night property.
Another question I have is on for the 8,000 gallon above ground tank. Virginia may not require, but does New Jersey require spill containment other than your double wall construction?
I'll have to check that. I don't know the code
No.
specifically.
No,
Okay.
The answer is no.
There we go.
Okay,
you'd have to put it in your public works bill.
And how is the tank going to be filled? Where's your tanker truck coming in from?
It's gonna come in from 206 through the main entrance. It'll drive around the parking lot. Typically stop right, in front of the tank here. And they'll fill it with the typical hose. Fill hose on top. There's actually there's a small metal staircase that takes you up to the top of the tank.
Do you know how long it would run on a full load of the tank?
No.
Not that all that important. Just
Now that I do not know. No.
Okay, Rob? It's Lou. I have a couple questions. So looking at this, you see, I'm not sure what your lot coverage is currently. I don't know if you're over lot coverage, but it seems to me that you have a lot of grass area that maybe you could have redesigned this, put it to the side more, put it closer to the building and still save some parking. Can you explain why it ended up exactly there in the parking lot and not on the grass?
Yeah, good question, Lou. Two things. One, we are over on lot coverage, I believe, on this site. I'm just gonna double check that right now. The lot coverage was 35% for the zone. This site's at like 47.9%.
Okay,
So we're over on coverage. And number two, that area, that grass area there starts sloping up towards the building as well. So we'd have to cut down some trees and also, install retaining walls and the like to put the generator closer to the building. That also makes it harder to access the fuel tank as well, for service and the like. So coverage was one aspect of it. And then number two was the grade there, from we were looking at where we were putting it. And there's existing electrical infrastructure that comes through there as well. So we're kind of located this in an area where we're avoiding the water lines and the existing electrical infrastructure.
okay. And the other question I have is, and I don't know the answer to this at all, but because it's diesel fed, does it have an odor to it that's different than if it was natural gas, which most of our generators in town are? I mean, is there, we're talking about noise, but what about smell?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I do not have the answer to that. If there's any type of, way to deal with it.
Probably the shorter answer to that, Lou, is this. First and foremost, the size of this generator is going to require an air permit from the DEP. Secondly, a generator this size cannot be run by natural gas. It's just too big.
Okay. I'm just concerned for the neighbors, when this thing runs, they get a whiff of diesel fuel coming their way.
I don't think they'll have the diesel fuel, you'll have the diesel exhaust, but it needs to meet the emission standard. And as I said, there's an air permit required.
Okay,
It's large.
that's good. Thanks.
anyone else?
a question, how often does it need to be tested?
The typical testing procedures are gonna be once a month, still exercise it. And they're gonna, AT&T personnel will be in charge of monitoring it. They'll have a separate maintenance, contract to maintain it. But yeah, once a month is typical, exercising of generators this size.
Is there any way that could be done on like a regular basis so the residents know that it's gonna hit on a certain day? When that starts up, and how long does it run for when it runs?
It's typically 20 minutes for exercising it. But we can certainly see if we can get it on a set schedule, but it's gonna be up to the maintenance folks when they come and do that.
Just thinking about the surrounding residents.
But
that'd be
it
something
it
for-
would, it would be weekdays and it would be at
Between 10 and 4.
between 10 and 4.
Okay, I'll open it up to the public. Janine, you got anybody?
They said, Pentella's with them. Is A Santos anybody or?
He's Arsenio, he's with us.
He's also, okay, so everyone that's online is with the applicant.
Okay, all right, then I can close it to the public.
Thank you.
Okay, Rob.
Ready?
Ready.
Good evening. I'll go through and talk about the parking first, because that's clearly the only variance issue that we're dealing with here.
Right,
And the perception is the people have moved in to this building a year and a half ago, and there's parking that seems tight and across the frontage of the property quite a bit as you drive by on 206. It's common. We've had that same discussion. A couple of things that we've asked AT&T to do is start getting parking counts. And they've started in March and April and gave us counts as far as the available spaces during the day. And at the, I'll say peak times at 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, not on Mondays and Fridays. Okay, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And just get an idea of what that is and what the availability is. The other thing that we know with every corporation right now is this whole concept of corporate work from home and downsizing the square footage. There's a constant change in headcount that's assigned to this building. Okay, so that's influx. So even what happens today is going to change a year from now and 2 years from now, as far as the headcount into that building and who's allowed to work from home and who's not allowed to work. So in the counting that was given to us, is there's somewhere between, in the timeframes that were done, 297 spaces available, 128 spaces, 182 spaces, 171, 197 spaces that were available at different times of the day. I've been through that since we started this application, drive through there myself, just to say that same thing. Wait a minute, there's no spaces available. And if you go all the way towards the library, okay, in the north, I guess that would be the northeast corner of the property, and you go down to the rear of the property, down where this is, that's where the spaces are available. And it becomes farther away for those people to walk. And we see them parking in other places, not necessarily in fire lanes in front of the buildings, but along some of the aisles on the sides that are closest to 206. So while we see someone at 206, I'm like, the parking lot's full. I drive in and there's 4 cars that are along the aisle that are parked close to 206 near the traffic light. But when you go in the back towards the library, there's multiple spaces that are open because it's convenience and anything else. Right, so yeah, again, that's just what we're seeing. So when we looked at this, and we're not sure whether they may need more parking at some time in the near future, and we've even had that discussion with them. We thought that that may be appropriate at some point in time, but right now the focus was to get the generator. And if their business model keeps shifting and changing, and now that we got them counting the cars that are available, the spaces that are available, and keep that going on a regular basis. I talked to the fire official and asked him, do you have any problems? Do you have any complaints? None. You know, so we're trying to figure out, is there really a problem here at all? Or is it our perception because some of those cars are parked close to the road in along drive aisles that are typically not supposed to be parked. They're away from the building, they're not close to the building, but that's occurring. So, as I said, we want to say we feel today we have enough parking, but we may be back 6 months or a year from now, potentially asking for more parking as their model changes. They've only been here a year and a half. Okay, so they're trying to figure that out. The other place across the street, they had tons of parking. They had thousands and thousands of parking spaces when they were the old facility. So as they changed their model and downsized and upsized or moved divisions around, they had plenty of parking. So, couple things that our observations are, and will be your board observations, they're not parking in Blues, but they're not parking in the library, and they're certainly not parking on 206. So any of that parking is contained to their site. We know of no hazards that they're causing in those areas there. And again, when we've done council, we've had them know council, they're parking there. And a pretty significant amount of parking, not down to 9 or 10 spaces or something as small as the de minimis amount that we're talking about now in order to effectuate this. All right, so it could be a concern going forward. We don't know now. I think we're going to ask them to monitor it. And if they know it'd be a problem for their employees, it's almost a self-inflicted issue. They're going to have to deal with it, and they're going to have to come back. And they're at whatever over in lot coverage already. So they're going to have to deal with that and the mitigation associated with any of that type of information if they're talking about getting some more parking to that claim.
Ron, do you think they have the ability to, depending upon who works at home, to not moderate the amount of parking? Are they almost determined?
I think I'll say this, we work for a lot of different corporations. Okay, Verizon campus up the street in Baskin Ridge, it was 1,200, 1,600 parking stall deck that we built, probably spent $50 million on it. It's empty. Okay, and they only built it 5 years ago, just before COVID. You know, just because things change, you know, back and forth. So I'm going to say this, Frank, what I see from not just AT&T, but just the corporate world, there's this balance that's going on.
Rebalancing.
And rebalancing, and they're downsizing excess square footage. Okay, but if it's all back to work for everyone, they're going to need more square footage.
Sure.
And they're going to have to go not only for what this board may be concerned about, but for their employment engagement, they're going to have to go get more space.
Yeah.
You know, somewhere else, but I say they're all trying to figure that balance out of what they're supposed to be doing for them. Reduce costs, give them the benefit of working home. It may not work in the business model, like it's bringing them all back to work. What days do they come back? Fridays and Mondays, I'm sure it's much less than half probably, because a lot of people get those benefits of work from home and those types of things. Our commuting patterns are changing. You know, so there's a lot of things, not just with this project.
You can do this for like an hour, you know?
What's that?
I shouldn't have asked. No, I appreciate it. You're doing it.
You asked Ron a question.
Trying to do it.
I'm sorry.
But we have looked at it, and you know, we really wanted to make sure that we're representing the loss of 9 spaces is not something that's going to put an additional burden on the property, on its employees, and certainly on the public welfare. And you know, by the assessments that we've done, even challenging them or going to the site as much as we have, because we buy it all the time, we think that the 9 space loss is acceptable, and I'll say for now. And you know, as their business model changes, as work from home strategy changes, it may not. That's every business.
If I remember correctly, they were supposed to have like alternate parking or alternate working. Wasn't that what was?
They talked about that.
Yeah.
And it's just a whole work from home. at different
Yeah.
times of the day. And you know, we know people that work in that building. Okay, and you know,
Yeah.
that they're working all different hours, and I think what they're getting direction from their company keeps changing.
Mm.
And so, as I said, a year from now, if we told them today how they're doing it, a year from now, it's gonna be different.
I think it's interesting to consider this. They need a variance from the parking that's required by the ordinance,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
They have run how many EV stalls out?
Only a handful, right? I don't know, 6, 8.
Right.
Yes,
They,
even sort of-
under the ordinance, they count 2 for 1. So technically, they may not even need a variance. Because each of those stalls counts as 2. The variance may, if there are 6, they would count as 12, which is 6 more than they have, so the variance would be for 3 stalls.
And if they install 3 more EV chargers, that's still double.
Yeah. up to 10% reduction. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there's all different types of things, but the practical thing is.
and that's the other aspect of it. It doesn't matter what your ordinance says. Is it enough parking for them to use? And I think the testimony is that under current operations, it is enough. And I think they get stuck with it. If they change their operations, then there aren't enough parking spots. Because there will be a point where fire official will come around and say, get those cars out of the aisles, and they may start ticketing them.
That's really the ultimate answer, because there's a certain tolerance for having that stacking along some of those drive aisles, but at a certain point, at the wrong time, things could go haywire. So, it would be great for the company just to make a policy that says you don't park there ever. There's plenty of parking in the, more remote area. Because I agree
Through
that
2 times during the week, and there are in the back, there was plenty of spots.
Yes.
This one.
you just
Well, I
gotta
don't
keep
think
driving.
that's concerned
But it's
now.
inconvenient.
In the future, who knows, but I don't have a crystal ball. I do have a question, what's this going to look like? This is a used unit, someone mentioned it's a container. Is it just the unit itself, the generator? Is that what we're gonna see on the outside, the generator, or is it enclosed in another type of?
No, you'll see it like a C box, that it'll be
It
a
is a C box.
fancy C box, that I'd say the container ship boxes that there.
And now it's
That'll
like-
be all 4 sides,
Okay.
all the 6 sides will be all enclosed.
Okay,
Okay, there'll be doors, the large doors that can open up for
and
maintenance.
go in,
But
okay.
everything's inside, not like a generator, where you see mufflers,
Yeah.
and you see all these other things. There'll have to be intake for air and an exhaust.
And
then
then
the gas
repaint it
tanks.
as necessary in case it's scratched up, dinged up. from
Yeah,
whatever
that's
they did.
okay.
Yeah, and yes,
And it's not pink, hot pink?
we don't, I
Can be, if you want.
It's not gonna be hot pink, it's the. It doesn't have AT&T logo. Yeah.
There you go.
We'll get a picture.
Just saying.
That's not hot pink.
No, it's gonna be something.
It's not-
Well, I'm wearing it, so that makes it.
The neighbors aren't gonna drive by and go, what the hell's that over there?
No, and the good news
Thank
is,
you.
I think two factors with the impact, and again, we're doing the planning side, the negative impact of this thing. Is from Clucas Brook, it's totally screened.
Okay.
With the combination of the berm and the vegetation that's been there for 30 years, 28 years, whatever it is. It is, there's no window that you can go on Clucas Brook and see this generator.
All right.
That's
good.
From the public on 206, it's really not a window that you're gonna see from 206 driving by either northbound or southbound, that you get a window that you're gonna see this structure. It is in a place that is fairly innocuous to the external elements of this project. Driving in that campus, coming, from the traffic light, driving to the front, you don't see it.
Okay.
Really, the only place you can see it is that lower parking lot that's right there with the loading dock. That's the only time anyone from the public or even a guest coming into the site would see it.
The lighting that Rob, you mentioned earlier, is that on 24/7?
No, it's not. It's only on for maintenance purposes.
Oh, only for maintenance, so that outside light is not being on. Okay.
It's no different than your light on the side.
George isn't here, so I felt I had,
Yeah, I
I was
know.
obligated to ask a lighting question.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Right, and just, I mean, besides the practical sense of this, just as far as the purposes of zoning, because that's really the criteria for the C2 variance in there. I think it's pretty straightforward in the sense that on purpose A, which is really about public health, safety and welfare, do have an issue that is a problem on the site with the power grid and needing the backup generator for what's in that building. And because that's critical infrastructure for them, their customers, I think that's important that that's done. And B, and purpose B, which is similar to that, is to secure from safety, to secure safely from fire, flood and panic. And we've already had, not a fire, but we've had flood and panic when that thing did fail in March last year, as far as that problem. And it was pretty significant what went on in that.
Sounds like it.
Besides the damage. And the good news is it was a Sunday at, I would say 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There was no one in the building. Okay, if that building was occupied, that would have been, with the 800 people, that would have had some problems. So it is something I think that is important, and it's consistent with the purposes of zoning for the relief that we're asking for of these 9 spaces for this. And it's just from the negative criteria standpoint, the outside world really won't see the units, but the negative criteria is about the parking space. is that the negative criteria about the parking is it's affecting the campus. It's not necessarily affecting external. If it was in the VN zone and you had people that had too many parking, that's a problem. Because you're gonna be parking on the street or in other people's lots. That's not a problem.
The size of the trailer is similar to, is it exactly the same size as what was previously approved?
The trailer,
Well, whatever we're calling the
It's slightly.
generator structure.
It's slightly larger. It's about 44 feet long and 13.5 feet wide. So it's a little bit larger than the RC structure. It's a little bit.
Plus the tank.
The tank next to it, yeah.
Tank,
The
yeah.
tank.
Yeah.
it's, that's.
Yeah, the ARC took up 5 spaces, it's taken up 9, so.
But it's 9, as Vinny said, with the diesel tank.
With the tank on.
Yeah.
And the tank is all enclosed. It has to meet all the EPA standards, you know, as far as the enclosure and what it has. And again, it's similar to what you have behind the public works building with the gas tank. It's the same style. When you look at the photos that are on the drawings, it's the same style. It's sitting in the public building.
So I have a quick question for Tom Collins. Tom, when Rob was doing the introduction, he mentioned that whether it was AT&T or the property owner, they are giving up the prior approval for the trailer. Do we need, does that need to be addressed in the resolution?
Yeah, yes, and we will, Larry, because they committed on the record and they're not asking for a variance from the number of parking spaces that includes those. I think it was 5 spaces that they got last time. So now they're only asking for 9, I guess. So yes, we will reference it, and it was kind and good of them to, and wise of them to abandon that, because then it would be 14. But they don't need a variance for 14.
Any other questions for Ron?
I had
Oh, sure. Go right ahead.
and you really did address this, but just for the clarity of the record, because we have this variant, just confirm, the benefit of controlling temperature in the data center during a power outage event substantially outweighs any potential detriment, correct?
It is the standard C2 argument that we've made. Certainly, there's a benefit to this that outweighs any of the degradation of those parking spaces.
And I think you did address the negative criteria, but just to make it clear, you can confirm there's no substantial detriment to the public good here and no substantial impairment of the intent or purpose of the zoning ordinance, correct?
I do agree on that, yes.
No further questions from me.
Anyone else? No? No? Okay, open up to the public. Janine, we find anybody?
So
No.
No? No? All right, we can close it to the public. And I guess, Tom, we're ready to address this. Tom, you there? We lose you?
We just need you to unmute, Tom.
Okay, can you hear me?
We do now.
Okay. We'll just confirm that this is a resolution to approve the preliminary and final site plan and related C variance for parking as described this evening, subject to the standard conditions and subject to Paul and Frank's reports and to the expressed abandonment of the prior approval for the accessory testing structure and its parking variance. And so the parking variance that's being granted, which can be effective this evening, with the applicant authorized to proceed effective immediately, provided all other requirements of compliance are met, will be for 9 parking spaces as requested. And that's and then the standard conditions, and that's, if there's a motion, that will become effective tonight.
So moved.
Okay. We need a second?
I'll say.
Mayor Jacobs,
Aye.
Mr. Walter.
Aye.
Mr. Leonard,
Aye.
Mr. DeGiovanni,
Aye.
Mr. Wild?
Aye.
Mr. DiMartino?
Aye.
Chairwoman Gotcha.
Aye.
Thank you very
Alright,
much.
approved.
Where Villanova cap? During basketball season? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And for the NCAA tournament, do we all just, well, you gotta get it, that's right, right. This,
We have a better chance then.
yeah, I would think so, right?
He was in attendance when Seton Hall beat Villanova.
Was he?
Yes, he was. He was at the game.
Were you at the game? Yep. Yeah, because you go to Seton Hall games, right? Yeah,
He was in attendance for that game.
Mhm. Okay.
that's pretty neat. That's really neat, yeah.
Well, that was a thing because
Seton Hall,
there was a bunch of clergy from the school there as well.
Right.
So they were all in attendance, so they spotlighted them. Cool.
oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, anything else from the board? Okay, any comments? Interest? No,
All good.
then we can have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Good night, all.
Good night, everyone.
Very cool.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.